Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing great. And today I have some good news for us. As you can see in the screen, that we have sold that cracking NTA UGC Net English PYQ explained series, like 500 copies. That's quite an achievement, isn't it? It's really everybody liking the book so much. I'm getting so good responses and they are loving it. And it's the same one that we are studying here in our live classes, right? So if you want it, again we have 500 more copies left. That has to be, but anyway, exam is very near. Even if you order now, it'll take time. But again, even if you get the book within 4 or 5 days, that'll be enough, right, for you to prepare. So if you want to order, you have to just WhatsApp me. I'll share the details, and for this great achievement you'll get some discount as well. But by the way, thank you so much for your overwhelming support, and really it means a world to me and for our team. And the good news, one more good news is there, that there will be surprise for you all, but after the exam, and that I'll share later. Anyway, we'll begin our class right away. Today we are going to discuss 2020 shift 1. So I hope this will help you a lot. And as you can see, these are the books that I have written that are still here, that you can order. It's like first volume is there, this is second, this is third and fourth. We have literary criticism and theory unlocked, which has over 380 plus pages. If you read that book, which means you will master criticism and literary theory, right? And we have also one book, the Shakespearean Odyssey, that is really quite good. Everything about Shakespeare is also there. We have last minute revision, which is our bestseller, sold over 10,000 copies. So that book, it's been quite a lot journey for that. Like 2-3 years back I have published this, and that was great success. But as I said, you can order this book by WhatsApp. You can WhatsApp me and get the details. Otherwise you'll get the link in the store, or you can just go and visit our website, which is nerdschool.online. Fine, this is some gallery that I have for the book, and this is all your 4 volume. These jewel is here. But anyway, we'll just start our class, and I hope everybody's ready. Shall we begin? Today it is about 2020 exam. This is volume 1 book. It is all from that book itself. So we'll begin. We'll start with the first question, which is in your screen. Just tell me the answer if you know. I think I should open this with so I can use the highlighter also. The book is here. Open with Microsoft Edge. So there we can highlight important things, right? Anyway, a little bit zoom so you can all see that. Okay, we'll start now. Question number first is in your screen. Okay, you can see the answer for now. But deductive, as we talked about, deductive is something start with particular and then move to general, right? Was that the one? So, general truth. It starts with what? General truth. Inductive is something you just what you observe and then come to one conclusion, right? So that is inductive, and the question is asking about the deductive methods differs from the inductive method in drawing conclusion exclusively from general truth, right? So that is our answer, and little bit explanation about it is there, that if you want to read you can read, but let me read it for you. So this inductive reasoning is a method in which a body of observation, that's the first step that happens in inductive, is synthesized to develop a general principle. So remember, start with particular observation, then we come to a general conclusion, that is your general statement. So inductive reasoning is distinct from deductive, right? Completely opposite. So if the premises are correct, the conclusion of deductive argument is certain. So in contrast, the truth of the conclusion of an inductive argument is probable based on evidence given. So that is our question number first. Question number second is in your screen. I'll just zoom a little bit more, so it'll be like full screen, right? That's perfect, right? Question number second is here. We are talking about publishes article related to what? It is talking about, the question is about journals, and we have to select which one is for critical theory. Okay, this journal publishes article related to critical theory, and tell me which one is it. Do you know the answer? If you know, write in the chat box quickly. Tell me you have. I'll give you like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then you answer. Fine. Okay, through the name also you can guess, no? It's about critical theory now, which will publish. And Priya says, अच्छा पूरी स्क्रीन नहीं दिख रही है. Okay, let me do the settings for that screen, why it's not fully visible. So I'll fix this. More zoom. It's fine. Tell me if you can see the screen clearly. Write in the chat box if you can see it. Say yes if you can see, or if not, you tell me. Okay, now it's fine. She can see the screen. Good. Priya can. I hope everyone can see now. We'll begin. We were talking about the journal which publishes articles related to critical theory. You have to identify which one is the correct answer. Write your response in the chat box quickly. Great. So through the name also you can guess, no, this could be or it is diacritic. Let's see the answer if it's correct. Yes, it is correct. It's diacritic. Well done, everybody. Now we'll just move what these article, not only this diacritic we'll talk about, we'll also talk about the rest of the options. Okay, so diacritic is what? It is quarterly peer reviewed academic journal which was established in 1971 at Cornell University. You have to remember the name as well, by the John Hopkins University Press. Great. And this journal usually publish review recent literature in literary criticism and have covered topics in gender studies, political theory, psychoanalysis, queer theory, and other areas that we have discussed once, right? And this class also will resume again later. And another is Kalalu, and that is the Journal of African Diaspora based on arts and letters. So it is also quarterly literary magazine and it's established on 1976. Also this is in chronological order also. So who remains? Charles Rowell. It's by Charles Rowell, and who remains its editor-in-chief. And it contains what? About creative writing, about visual arts, and critical text about what the literature and culture of African diaspora, and is probably the longest continuously running African magazine, African American literary magazine. Fine. Great. Already is highlighted everything. We don't have to highlight in yellow. But anyway, we'll just... Another is Salma Gundi. And that also asked in, I think, second shift related to this one. So we have something, based on the shift one also. In the second shift, you will find related questions. So anyway, this is what? This is US quarterly periodical featuring cultural criticism, fiction, poetry, right? And along with transcript of symposia and interviews with prominent writers and intellectual. Another important name is important in this Salma Gundi is that Susan Sontag, a long-time friend of the publication, referred it as simply my favorite little magazine. I hope you will remember that if they ask question related to that. Grand Street, what? It is also an American magazine, and that appeared from 1981 to fall of 2004. And it was described by New York Times as one of the most revered literary magazines of the post-war era. Fine, that's great. Let's see question number 3. If you can answer, write in the chat box. The question says, which one of the following assumptions best expresses the position of remember, it expresses what? The position of post-structuralist criticism. So the question is about post-structuralist criticism. Tell me which one of the following assumption, what best expresses about what? Post-structuralist criticism. So the options are given below. Does it define definite structures, underline empirical events, or apprehension of reality is a construct? A language is representational. Knowledge operates according to axiomatic procedure. Tell me if you know the answer. Write in the chat box quickly. So I just want to tell you about a little bit about post-structuralism. So post-structuralism, as you know, starts with who? Michel Foucault, and also Roland Barthes is there, Jacques Lacan is there, Julia Kristeva is there, and others. So These are all post-structuralism, and you know what? This is a kind of philosophical moment. It started with where Ferdinand de Saussure, the anthropology of Claude Lévi-Strauss, and the deconstructionist theory of Jacques Derrida. So Jacques Derrida is there, Michel Foucault is there, Ferdinand de Saussure is there. Excuse me, I'll be back in a minute. So I'll be back in a minute. Give me like 2 minutes and I'll be here. Sorry guys, just caught up with something. Anyway, did you answer the? Okay. So as I asked you, question number 3 says we have to find which assumption best expresses the position of post-structuralist criticism. So the options are there and you have to find which one expresses the best. Write in the chat box. Anyway, I've seen it. So first of all, as I told you, post-structuralists are starting with Ferdinand de Saussure, then we have Lévi-Strauss, Claude Lévi-Strauss, and then we have Jacques Derrida. So what happens here, that the language is not a transparent medium that connects one directly with the truth or reality outside it, but rather a structure or code whose parts derive their meaning from their contrast with one another and not from any connection with an outside world, right? So we have the explanation that I told you right now. Post-structuralism began where? In France, late 1960s. So you have to remember the date also. Before that, there was structuralism and before that we had formalism, which was in Russia, right? Question number 4 is in your screen. Tell me which one of the following is correct about Shishor. Again, as we told you in previous class, that whenever one question comes, there is like follow-up question. You might get 1 or 2 questions, right? So that is also important, that if they ask about post-structuralism or linguistic or any particular topic, you will get another question related to the question. So we have follow-up questions there always. So in the first question they talked about post-structuralism, right? Here they're talking about Shishor. So Shishor, analysis of language. We know that he talked about Long and Parole, right? Here we have to find which one is the correct. So Long, according, is it true that Long is the system at a particular time? Is it? Or LA Lang is a particular instance of speech and writing? Or Parole focuses on language as a system at a particular time? Parole is the study of language over a period of time. Tell me which one do you think is the correct. So speech and writing, the answer is particular time. That should be, because we'll explain you better in very simple language that what is long. Meanwhile, you just read this one, and then I'll try to explain Lang and Parole with example. So Lang and Parole, here answer says that Lang is what? The system at a particular time. So I'll just tell you in simple language that this Lang is the rule. It's like a rule of the game. Like if you play a chess, so what is the rule of the chess? That rule is kind of Lang. And here also in the language, the rule we say, the grammatical rule, another, right? That is your Lang. And just like any game, not only the chess but other games, just like how games have certain rules that everyone play and follow the rule, right? So also language has the kind of their own set of rules. So these rules include, like we have grammar, so there are like grammatical rule, there is also vocabulary rules, and the sentence structure. So they help us usually to understand and communicate with others. In simple example, if I say today that my book has been like 500 copies have been sold, right? And and I'm so happy about it. So I am happy. We know that the word order should be like subject should be there, verb should be there, and object, right? All the grammatical rule, because that's how the language rule work, right? So these rules are like from the beginning. In our school also we learn about past, present, and future tenses, right? So these rules are Lang. And Parole, on the other hand, is what? Tell me. Parole is something like how we actually play the game. Okay, it's when we use the language rules to create a sentence and have conversation, right? So when we say something like I love ice cream, so that's an example of using Parole. We can express our thought, feelings, and ideas through Parole, which is what? Your language, right? Whatever we understand. So in simpler terms, Lang is the rule book of language, while Parole is what? How we actually use those rules to communicate. Just like how we need to follow the rules of a game to play it. So properly, if you can say, we use the rules of langue to speak and understand each other, it's parole. So that keyword you can no. Anyway, I'll just draw one thing. No. So that's what is lang and parole. And question number 5 is in the screen. Tell me if you know the answer. It is the question is about what? It is about a theorist. So we have to identify the name, right? So our theorist is keyword in the question, and it's asking about what? The social and historical dimension of the text. So tell me if you know the answer. Write in the chat box. Okay, I'll tell you. Historical. Stanley Fish is, we know as the reader response. Wolfgang Iser is also reader response, right? And Pierre Bourdieu is not about that, but he is about culture studies. But here we are talking about historical and social dimension. Who talked about it? Stanley Fish cannot be, because according to Stanley Fish, the reader is the source of to interpret text. It doesn't require authors particular social or historical dimension or whatever, right? It all depends on the judgment of the reader, whatever he reads. So that is Stanley Fish and Iser. Iser, we know that he's related to that hypo something is there, right? One term is there. Anyway, we'll discuss it. So as I said, this is historical and social. Which of the theories talk about the social and historical dimension of a text reception is important? Tell me. It is answer is also, they are all German, right? I mean, this is Wolfgang Iser is German, Hans Robert Joss is German. So the answer is Hans Robert Joss. So as I told you, if you have little bit knowledge about other options, also through that you can eliminate an answer. So Hans Robert Joss, he was a German and notable for his work in reception theory. So that is quite important. You have to note that term also, especially his concept of horizon of expectation. That question we have already discussed in, I think, 2021 or 2022, somewhere we have discussed. We came across that horizon of expectation, and that also we have discussed thoroughly in literary criticism and theory unlocked, and that means in medieval and modern French literature. So in a reception theory, where is concept of the horizon of expectation and medieval and modern French literature. His approach was derived from the hermeneutic of Hans-Georg Gadamer. So Stanley Fish is American literary criticism, as we know, and he's related to what? Reader response criticism, right? And that reader response meaning is what? Meaning of the text is created rather than discovered, and it's all by the reader, right? And with neo-pragmatism, where the critical practices is advanced over theory, and with the interpretive relationship between literature and law. And Wolfgang Iser is also German and is known for the reader response criticism in literary theory. This theory began to evolve in 1967. He was working in the University of Constance, and which he helped to find in the 1960s. So in his study of Shakespeare's histories, particularly Richard II, Iser interprets what? Richard's continually changing legal policy as an expression of the desire for self-assertion. Pierre Bourdieu, as we know, he is a French socialist and who was a public intellectual in the tradition of Émile Zola and Jean-Paul Sartre. So Bourdieu concept of habitus, important, socially acquired. what disposition was influenced in recent postmodernism, humanities, and social sciences. And he is known for La Distinction, or in simply you can say Distinction. It was published in 1979. And Body argued that those with high social and cultural capital status are the arbiter of taste, and that one's own particular taste comes from the milieu and social class in which lives, that is one. So an individual almost innate knowledge of how to live in and navigate the field is what he termed as habitus. So remember the keyword. Bourdieu, what coined? He coined habitus. Question number 6 is in your screen. Tell me the answer. It is easy, right? It is talking about a metaphysical poet. Who was associated with? First, Dryden said about metaphysical poet, right? And then we have Samuel Johnson, that in the Life of Cowley, right? That he termed the metaphysical. But before that, it was Dryden who mentioned about metaphysical poet. So if they ask about metaphysical term, and they'll be particular about it. It's not like they'll ask, blindly. So remember that this metaphysical poets, here they're talking about which one of the, according who are the metaphysical poets, simply. So Andrew Marvell, we know, is there, right, in metaphysical poem. And we have John Donne is also metaphysical poet, right? And we have Henry Vaughan. Of course, he is also metaphysical poet. So it seems like we found the answer in the first option itself. Dryden is not. Herbert can be. Alexander Pope definitely not. Samuel Johnson, no, because he comes very late. T.S. Eliot, no way. Herbert Christian, no way. Henry Vaughan is there, yes, but Donne is also there, but Dryden is doing something here. So that option is eliminated. So all these three is not. Our answer is first itself. Let's see if it is correct. Exactly, that is the correct answer. And metaphysical poet is what? Is the poet. It's a group of poets in the 17th century England who were inclined to the personal and intellectual complexity and concentration that is displayed in the poetry of Donne, who is the chief of the metaphysical. Then we have Henry Vaughan, Andrew Marvell, and John Cleveland, and Abraham Cowley, as well as, to a lesser extent, George Herbert also, and Croce. But who are the main one? Donne, Vaughan, and Marvell. I hope you will get the correct. And a little bit about metaphysical poets. What are these poets? What is the metaphysical poets? So here a little bit about it. Their work, usually what happens when you read Donne, Vaughan, or Marvell, it is actually blend of emotion and intellectual ingenuity, characterized by conceit or wit. That is, by the sometimes it could be violent yoking together or apparently unconnected ideas and things, so that the reader is startled out of his complacency and forced to think through the argument of the poem. So in Donne, no, we have campus example, right? We have in Donne like sun example. We have quite a lot of example, metaphysical example in Donne's poetry. Also in Marvell, that we have. So metaphysical poetry is less concerned with expressing feeling than with analyzing it. So with the poet exploring the recesses of his consciousness, the boldness of the literary devices used, especially obliquity, irony, and paradox, right? And remember that in So metaphysical poetry never stood higher than in the 30s and 40s, largely because of T.S. Eliot influential essay The Metaphysical Poets, a review of Herbert J.C. Christian anthology Metaphysical Lyrics and Poem of the 17th Century. So in the Metaphysical Poets, Eliot says, so we have three people, right? First one was that Dryden, who talked about metaphysics. Then we had Samuel Johnson, he talked about in the Life of the Collie. And then we have an essay itself says The Metaphysical Poets by T.S. Eliot. So Eliot argued that the works of these men embody a fusion of thought and feeling that later poets were unable to achieve because of dissociation of sensibility, which resulted in works that were either intellectual or emotional, but not both at once. So in their own time, however, epithet metaphysical was used in pejoratively. In 1930, the Scottish poet William Drummond of Hawthornden objected to those of his contemporaries who attempted to abstract poetry to metaphysical ideas, scholastic equidities. At the end of the century, what John Dryden censured Donne. Remember we talked about, no? It was John Dryden who said that Donne has the metaphysic, the effect of the metaphysics. And then what happened? Samuel Johnson was there, right? Full quote of John Dryden about metaphysics is the minds of the fair sex with a nice speculation of philosophy when he should engage their hearts with the softness of love. Right? Samuel Johnson, on the other hand, says what? He says that the learning that their poetry displays also dubbed them the metaphysical poets, and the term has continued in use ever since. And at the end we have Eliot, who says the adoption of the label as term of praise in arguably a better guide to his personal aspiration about his own poetry than the metaphysical poets themselves. I hope you got it, or you got the series, of the critic who said about it, and who are the critic, who not critic, the poets who belong to metaphysics. So these, everything is there in your explanation book also. So which one of the following statements is true about Aristotle poetry? We talked about Aristotle poetics, right? And what he talked about mimesis. Remember we talked in our first class about mimesis. We talked about imitation, right? And we talked about that how he was defending poetry against Plato, and Plato said what? That the poetry is the mother of lie, and that it should be completely banished from the ideal state. Poetry has no place in the ideal state, right? So through that you can answer. If you had taken that class, no, you will understand. So anyway, we'll just point out the options here. The first option says he asserted the value of poetry by focusing on imitation, mimesis rather than rhetoric. Does he talk about it? He definitely talk about like imitation, right? Mimesis, but rather than rhetoric. It could be little bit because he also talked about rhetoric, right? So tell me, what do you think? Write in the chat box the answer if you know. Otherwise, we'll just continue with the explanation. So he talked about mimesis, right? He asserted, other options we'll just look into it. He asserted the value of poetry by giving preference to rhetoric over imitation. That was not the point. He actually strongly said what? That the poetry is what? By focusing on imitation rather than rhetoric. He talked about, right? So this is definitely not there. And third option says he asserted the value of poetry integrating rhetoric and imitation both, right? He's integrating. So it was What do you think? Is it the answer? So this is a little bit closer. We'll just talk about this in the explanation. Anyway, option number 4 says he asserted the value of poetry by focusing on both rhetoric and imitation. See, all these three options, these three are quite identical, right? Don't you see? I mean, not identical in the way that it should, I mean, it is there, but all mention the same key points. Aristotle talks about rhetoric, he talks about imitation, but does he talk about that integrated rhetoric and imitation, or does he talk about like both rhetoric and imitation? He talked about it, but focusing on both. Here it says, and here it says rather than rhetoric. That seems a little bit right, because he definitely talk about, we'll just see, our guess should be this, what this should be, right? Let's see if it is the right one. He asserted the value of poetry by focusing on. That's correct. We are right. And why? We'll just see the explanation. It will be a long explanation, because we are again going to revise this. So that's what happened when you do PYQ. You again and again you revise the same thing, and at the eventually what happens, that imprints in your brain. So when you see the question, you will automatically answer. And remember, the first important thing is that follow your instinct. Whatever comes in your first in mind, you think, then you judge and go with the first. If you, while reading everything, focus on your instinct, answer this with your instinct, and then read everything is there, whatever is there. And if you are so much confused between 2-3 options, then always go what your natural instinct says, because that is all imprinted in your brain, right? That's nice. Right, we'll just explain quickly what is happening here. Here we are talking about Aristotle's Poetic is what is the earliest surviving work that we know, dramatic theory, and we have the Aristotle's offers an account of which refers the poetry as more literally the poetic art deriving from poet, author, maker. And remember, one of the important thing in poetic is that he divides the art of poetry into verse drama. So there is comedy, tragedy, satire, lyric poetry, epic, and the genres all share the function of what mimesis. So mimesis is like superior to everything, even to rhetoric also. So difference in music and rhythm, harmony, meter and melody, that is the thing that he talked about in the poetry part, and difference of goodness in the characters, and the difference in how the narrative is presented, telling a story or acting it out, right? So the poetics is primarily concerned with drama, as we know, right? He talked about what mimesis, that it should represent the reality or represent the life or the imitation of life, right? So the analysis of tragedy constitute the core of the discussion, although the text is universally acknowledged in Western. That is just simple thing about it. We'll just move to the points that he talked about poetry. He asserted value of poetry by giving preference to the over imitation. Remember, poetry by integrating rhetoric. These are all wrong statement, right? And who said? Question number 8 is in your screen. Who said about the blank verse, quoting an unnamed critic, that is the verse only to the eye? Who was the guy who talked about verse only the eye? And adding further, that has neither the easiness of prose nor the melody of number. Who was more influenced of blank verse? We know that Milton has usually, we know blank verse because of him, right? Most of English majors, but that was before that also. But here through that we can picture it. So tell me who was talking about. Dryden cannot be, because Dryden uses rhyme, right? He doesn't use blank verse. So there are, less likely that he might talk about verse only, the IE. And Samuel Johnson, that he can, because he was at that time a great critic and he talked about all the form of the poetry. Right, Pope on the other hand is also didn't talk about, he was also in rhyming couplet. His poetry all rhymes and follow a particular rule, not like blank verse, right? And Samuel Johnson, however, talked about that blank verse, but he didn't write. He was more focused in what common language, right? So it must be Johnson who might have talked about it. So let's see. Our guess is that, and through the answer we'll just see, right? Samuel Johnson. Okay, so that is all. That is our correct answer. Easy on the poetic theory from lives. So actually it is their essay on poetic theory from lives of the poets by O. Johnson. So in life of Milton he talked about. I told you, through that we can judge. And it was Samuel Johnson who talked about Milton, and he said the blank verse makes some approach to that which is called the lapidary style, and has neither the easiness of prose nor the melody of numbers, and therefore tires by long continuance. Fine, I hope you got it. And again, one more sentence is there. Of the Italian writers without rhyme, whom Milton alleged as precedents, and not one is popular. And what reason could urge in its defense has been confused by the year. This is all what it is, a full quote from Samuel Johnson, Life of Milton. And he was naturally a thinker, according to him. According to Samuel Johnson, that Milton was naturally a thinker of himself, confident of his own abilities, and disdainful of help or hindrance. I hope you got it. I think we are 47 minutes, right? 47 minutes already done. We'll just discuss 2-3 more questions, and then we'll just continue this class at night. So from today we are going to take the class at night also. So if you are available, please do join. Anyway, question number 9, poetry according to Sir Philip Sidney. Now we are talking about the poetry. 3 kind of poetry, right? We talked about 3 kind of poetry. One was philosophical, right? You remember that we had talked about it in our class on Renaissance criticism. I hope you remember that. I hope you have watched that class also. So anyway, we know that he talked about what? Religious. That his poetry talked about religious theme. He also talked about what? Philosophical. Imaginative is not there. And religious. We have also talked about dramatic, yes, and the romantic, is it? But anyway, we'll just discuss in the explanation. So it is religious, dramatic, romantic. Well, I feel that is the right, but here it says romantic. Anyway, we'll see. An Apology for Poetry or Defense of Poetry is a work of literary criticism by, of course, Sidney, and it was published in 1580s, and eventually it was written in 1580, and it was eventually published in 1595, and it was only published after his death. And it was the reply of his Stephen Gushon, who wrote about it, and he defended the poetry from Stephen Gushon's work, The School of Abuses, right? So have been three general kinds of poetry. So the chief of being is the religious, that we know, and inconceivable excellence of God. 2 is philosophical, 3 is imaginative. So that is our right answer. The first one here is, this is completely wrong, the option here, because this is not right. So this is wrong. Our answer should be what? Religious, philosophical and imaginative, right? This is our right answer. See, through the explanation, even that's why it's important you should read. So the general kind of poetry is what? The religious, the first one, then the philosophical, and then the imaginative, right? So remember that is our answer, not the which has been given here. I hope you understand. And in anxiety of influence, which is by Bloom, right? We know about Harold Bloom, that he talked about anxiety of influence, and he also talked about anxiety of author. Explain what term? Kleinaman. Kleinaman is important. They have asked twice, actually 3 times in net. So that is what? Kleinaman means what? Is it sublime? No, definitely. If it is anxiety, how it could be poetic sublime, right? So this should not be there. And poetic supplement. Poetic supplement, does it talk about it? Or poetic hyperbole? No, if it is anxiety of influence, it could answer would be the poetic mispression. If you have read or if you have watched our class on Harold Bloom, you might have got the right answer. That is the answer. The anxiety of influence, remember, is a theory of poetry by Harold Bloom, published in 1973, and it was the first in a series of books that advanced the revisionary or antithetical approach to literary criticism. The central idea of this thesis is that the poets are hindered in their creative process by ambiguous relationship they necessarily maintain with precursor poets, while admitting the influence of extra literary experience on every poet. And he argues that the poet in a poet is inspired to write by reading another poet's poetry and will tend to produce work that is in danger of being derivative of existing poetry. So therefore it's weak. So because poets historically emphasize on original poetic vision in order to guarantee their survival into posterity, the influence of precursor poets inspire a sense of anxiety in living poets. So the book itself is divided into 6 major categories that they can ask. That's why we have little bit explanation required. Remember, they are Kleinaman. Always they have asked twice about that. They might ask about Tessera this time, or they might ask about kenosis or daemonization or ascesis and apophrasis. Okay, so the Kleinaman is what? It is a Latin name of Lucretius gave to the unpredictable serve of atoms to defend the atomic doctrine of Epicurus. Question number 11. Today we are only going to cover 10 questions. Tomorrow we have already covered 10, right? 10 more would be too much. So what I was thinking, I'll continue this class at night. Okay, so I'll see you there. For now, we'll have only 10 questions. So I'll see you at 8 o'clock. I'll share the link in your WhatsApp group. Make sure join. And thank you again. Bye bye. See you at night.